Let's talk about realms, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things you can't see.
Oh, did you make that up?
Let's talk about fairies. Hello and welcome to Frequency Broads. I am Victoria.
And I am Tara, and we are so happy you are here today. We are going to get right into it with our breath exercise. And today we're going to be both alivening the body and grounding and calming our body. This breath is really good if you're getting kind of like nervous or anxiety about something and that inner stomach is kind of tensing up. This is really good to settle and calm the body, as well as Victoria just shared with me. As we breathe in, we're going to get this sip of cool air, alivening the body and waking us up from the stillness that is winter. So finding a place to land your hands, whether it be on your heart, one on your heart, one on your belly, wherever feels comfortable for you to settle in this moment, closing down the eyes. And let's just begin with a releasing breath. So breathing in and sighing out anything the body no longer needs. And now we're going to take a deep breath in through the nose. And at the top, add a little bit more of a sip of a breath. And then release it out. We're going to do 2 more like that. So inhale nice and big. Holding for a moment and then taking an extra sip. And then letting it all out. And 1 more inhale. Extra sip. Exhale. Coming back to your normal breath. Noticing the stillness in the body, but I know my heart is starting to race. My heart is starting to pound. The energy is flowing as we tune in and channel to spring. Spring, we are a few days away from spring, and we thought what better time to get us ready for not just next week, but for this very moment when we're still in the darkness before spring.
My favorite season. It is what gets me through the winter. It feels so good. That crisp, fresh scent in the air, blossoms blooming, birds chirping, worms crawling out of the ground.
Oh, I love that. Wriggling their way out.
Slowly waking up.
Ding, 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 ding. Did you hear what Victoria said? Slowly waking up. Victoria, I know you really wanted to touch upon this darkness and transition into spring. So before we even talk about the energies of spring and what spring means and some things that we can do within spring, let's talk about where we have been for the past 2 weeks and still sit in currently.
This past winter has been a deep, dark hibernation for me personally. Even though I have been out and about, I've gone deeper within than I have probably any other winter, and I think it's worth us doing a little debrief on what we gathered, what dreams we may have had, what sort of insights we gained from stillness. Do you have anything that you gleaned from the past 3 months?
Well, as you all have heard me talk about a couple of times, there was this really, really deepening into what I identify as and being able to examine all of these little nooks and crannies. You know, one of those things where you feel like you're examining yourself and you're like, I saw everything. And then the next day you go in and you're like, oh my God. It was like just going deeper, like you said, really sitting in some uncomfortable feelings and situations and being able to really just sit in it And similarly, when I was getting downloads, right, or information or projects or ways to move forward, my brain was like, let's go. And my soul, my energy was like, nope, we are still sitting in this. Have you really examined what we've just given you? So for me, yes, it's been really deep, but now these past couple weeks, and I'm sure you felt the same way, I've been so eager and almost like really losing the patience that I have practiced all winter long to just get to the spring, get to the rebirth practice, the moving forward, the cleansing, the air, like you said, the blossoming. So it's been kind of like a little rigid for me because I want to move, but I can't yet go.
Mm-hmm. I always feel like patience is a sweet reminder of how to ease into this season. And, we both grew up in the Northeast where our winters are very cold and dark and cause us to isolate and cancel plans because of snowstorms and kind of work around the weather in a way that limits us. And so when we have the freedom to go out and do whatever we want to do, it makes for an interesting life, right? The past few weeks, I have been thinking a lot about energy, of course, and starting this podcast. And I feel like the universe has been kind of helping me work out who is meant to be in my life and who isn't. So I've had to say goodbye to some friends and tending to the grief that comes with ending friendships. It's never easy, never fun. It's never what I think either person wants to do, especially if you still kind of like each other, but there's just no alignment any longer. And so I think finding grace in saying goodbye and not, letting every ending be tumultuous, but sort of a honor of what we had and a, opportunity to make space for people who are in alignment with me. The other major theme over the past couple of months is how I view consumption, not only with what I put in my body, but what I buy. And I've really been developing a new relationship with money and understanding the full life cycle of, for an example of like buying a thing, like whatever, like it just, where did it come from? What kind of resources were extracted? How many hands did it go through? Like what kind of warehouse was it in? What kind of distribution process happened from like plane to truck to train to then the person delivering it to my mailbox? It really goes to make you think, especially in this world where everyone wants their instant gratification via Amazon or whatever. And I have very strong feels about Amazon, but here we are, and we're like, always being told to vote with our dollar, and how much of it has to do with the consumer's responsibility versus those who are higher up has been another theme, and who's actually being held responsible for the way in which business is done. And my way of taking a step back was to really limit my consumption and to sit with how things make me feel. Because I grew up in a pretty materialistic house upbringing. I feel like the 90s was just kind of like full of junk and plastic and
for sure,
just crap, right? And so I've really been analyzing like what is made of plastic or even polyester that's touching my skin all day and my body's absorbing it. And I've mentioned before, I work in sustainability, and I've kind of been stepping back and reflecting on what sustainability means in 2023. And I have to say, I've really gathered that living a simple life is greatly satisfying. And I don't desire stuff like I used to, thanks to this cleanse. And maybe it was part of my, celibacy journey. in what I consume in my mind and in my, wallet. But I think holistically thinking about money as an energy exchange has been incredibly insightful.
Oh my God, so beautifully said. Thank you for giving us that little just window of, it sounds like, yeah, you went deep, you pulled back, sitting in that stillness, right? Sitting in the grief of losing friends, sitting in how does something actually make you feel? And when we talk about sitting in it, it's exactly what Victoria is talking about right now, right? Just sitting with, okay, where did I get this pen and how does it make me feel about it? And it sounds so silly, but I mean, Victoria, I feel like we got the whole Frequency Broads clan behind me when I say it's only been, we're at episode 6 now. And I feel like whether it all happened in this time frame or not, right? You've given us a little bit of celibacy of the body, of the mind, of consumption. And I see that it's building. It's so beautiful to watch because I'm watching you take back your power. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you for witnessing me go through this journey.
But it seems like you may be, how are you feeling about, are you ready to now come out of that and burst into spring? Or do you feel like you still need that time of reflection and like peeling back? How does it feel at this moment?
Perhaps there are a few more layers. I feel like there always are, and now may not be the time for them to be peeled back. I'm always ready to leap into spring. And I think it's the point in which I'm ready to start acting a little differently when I go out into the world and when I consume and when I have energy exchanges that fuel me and I fuel them.
Oh, and I think something to note, you mentioned like a material driven household, and you're right, it was the 90s, and I'm sure prior to that as well, but I think a part of that is we're coming into this space of understanding that love, like I think a part of us has always understood that love is an energy exchange. But our parents' generation wanted to show so much love and was being programmed that the way to do that is with gifts and giving gifts often. So that was their, shout out to our parents for trying their best to like give us so much love in that way. But at the same time, it's so beautiful that we're now all experiencing this shift into, yeah, we don't need to exchange physical objects to exchange that energy of love. I can just give you XYZ in quality of time or intention to move forward.
Yes, I do want to second that shout out to our parents for trying their best the way they know how. I feel like our parents' generation represented a group of souls that really weren't given the opportunity to learn how to love themselves in the way in which we have been blessed to do so. And I recognize that. And for many people, I think their awakenings happened much later in life, which doesn't make it any easier or, harder. It just is sort of the timing in which they got to experience it.
Well, speaking of, like them awakening at a certain time, right? So we're seeing this transition from, and of course, I've only fully in this moment embody this lifetime. I can access the others, but our parents grew up, or at least I can speak from my parents' perspective, in a state of no energy exchange of love or very little energy exchange of love because there was so much turmoil that their parents were kind of ruffling through. So even though they were giving us gifts and gifts and gifts, it was such a shift for them. And then came an awakening to understand that, oh, we actually can do something more than give gifts. And that brings me to think about recognizing that, we're talking about spring, but the energy, the frequency of spring is alive in so many different places. One of them being your full lifespan, being one cycle, right? And we've talked about this in cycle and time. So spring, rebirth, coming alive, right? From the void, the darkness, right? We think of seeds being just in darkness, holding on until they're ready to pop. And then even that, they're not blossomed until closer to summer, right? They don't come out and blossom right away. So when we think of where are we in our own evolvement and how we are able to perceive our lives and heal from trauma, recognize that spring, right? I know the calendar starts in January, but let's understand that spring is really the start of the cycle over again. So spring being that start is really from when you're like conceived all the way until you're 21. That is a long fucking time to allow yourself to just, like, not to get too metaphorical, but think about a fucking seed, dude. Like, you got to water the seed so the seed coat softens. Then this little freaking sprout's got to push out. Then it's got to push all the way through the soil. Then this freaking roots have to go all the way down. There is so much before the first little shoot that you see. So recognize when you're getting tripped up about the things we're talking about, I can't do that. It's hard for me. I'm in it. I'm stuck. That's okay. Because those first huge years of your life is just when you're emerging to begin with. And then there's a whole other slew of things that happen as your evolvement, your growth continues.
I want to jump back to presence, because I really do believe presence, not presence, is the greatest gift we can give someone. And so my question for everyone, you, Tara, even if you feel inclined to answer this, how present do you feel in your body? And that's a good way to gauge like your energy level for the day and how much energy you're able to give. How present am I? What do I need to do to become present?
That is a good question. And a skill, right? It's something you practice.
Definitely a practice.
So again, one of those things where everything that Victoria and I are talking about, right? Especially with spring, this part of rebirth, we want to jump in and be ready to take action and be fully embodied. And you have to have compassion, patience for yourself, because it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some training of the brain to come back to the present moment. So it's okay if you're not always present, right? It's a practice. It's recognizing that.
It's totally okay if you're not present, but where the hell are you is my question. And I often have to ask myself as well, because I tend to kind of float out into the heavens, the ethers, and spring is a really great reminder that what's happening is here on earth, and to get grounded and rooted and plant your own seeds with intentionality, because you are the bearer of these seeds of magic.
I know I've mentioned how spring is this rebirth, right? And I talk about the beginning of your life, but there's so much more that hold the spring frequency. The season, of course, but also the morning. And recognizing that, you know, to have patience and compassion for yourself, especially in times of the morning, right? You think about winter is this deep sleep. So your REM sleep is that deep winter. And how fucking hard is it for us to get out of this like hazy state of like, I just had a really crazy dream, or I was just in deep sleep, and now I need to get up and get started with my day, get ready for work, whatever it is that I have to do. It's really difficult. So having that patience and having that compassion to say, okay, I am entering from winter to spring. Let me give myself 2 minutes. 2 minutes to be present in my body and say, okay, checking in. What's the energy level? Did I travel too far in my dream last night? Where did I go? What was there any messages that came through? Is there any emotions that's still sitting in the body, right? Morning holds the frequency early morning holds the frequency of spring. So, really trying to take that easy in the morning is a reminder to take it easy through the spring. Allow yourself to slowly emerge from the darkness before diving into what feels like that heavy action and motivation and driven energy that summer brings us.
It's very fascinating to hear you say that it's hard to wake up in the morning because you are in fact a morning person, and so it makes me wonder, like, what about it feels hard for you? Is it the, like,
Well, it's
transition
interesting.
from dream to
It's
waking?
you know what? It's funny. I always I always considered myself a sim. Like I had the energy bar and like as soon as my energy bar was full, like my eyes were open and I'm ready to run. And I am, but when I shift from if we think about the seasons, if I shift from winter to summer so quickly, which is what I've done my whole life, right? As soon as my alarm goes off or as soon as my eyes open, get the fuck out of bed. I don't care how tired I am. Like we're just hurry, take care of the boys, like take care of the house, get ready for work. And I realized right after this quote unquote spring frequency time, I would get like really like that big, I know we all feel, and here we go. This is why we all feel that afternoon crash because you took all the energy that was supposed to be for the afternoon, the highest part of the sun, our biggest energy move, and shoved it smack dab as soon as you wake up. So I was feeling this dis-ease after. So it wasn't the fact of getting up that was hard, but it's because I didn't allow myself to shift into that spring frequency of ease and blossoming awake and slowly energizing my body. And now that I've been working part-time in the afternoons, that morning that's what it is. I slowly remember my dreams, start to move my body, face yoga or stretching, tongue scraping, sitting with myself, having a cup of tea, like setting that morning routine, whatever it looks like for you, so that way you're easing out of this winter state through spring before you enter the workforce that is summer that needs you to fucking be on all the time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I know you're not a morning person. So thinking about it in the frequencies of the season, how does that play out for you?
I'm not a morning person because I have a very hard time going from sleeping and dreaming to then waking life. And I think it's because I am such a dreamer and I like wherever I go in my sleep. Kind of. But on the contrary, sometimes it takes me so long to get to sleep because there is this anticipation of how much activity happens at a soul level during my sleep state. So there's resistance going to sleep and then almost like resistance waking up. And I'm simultaneously somehow a night owl and not a morning person, but I do wake up pretty early because of my job. And
Crazy early.
it's silly. And I do live vicariously through your soft, slow starts of a morning. But one way, because I do wake up and I have a huge to-do list, I've found that my self-talk and the way I communicate with myself in the morning it sets the tone for the rest of the day. And so I've been really gentle with myself and send myself loving affirmations, telling myself I'm doing great. Beyond doing great, I really do remind myself who I am and that I love myself. And it's so tough, I have to say. It was tough, is tough. I don't know, it depends on the morning, I guess, to not look at my phone first thing in the morning. That is the hardest thing I think any of us will give up because our alarm clocks are there, right? And I think that's a good way to like stop looking at your phone first thing, keep it in another room or something. But holy crap, our immediate need to tune into the world, to find out what happened overnight, and to even just, feeling, why do we have to like tune in with the world? Why can't we tune in with ourselves first? And it brings up the topic of, I think, filling our cup first, like we've talked about, right? And then being able to go out into the world with our best selves and our energetic levels ready to supply the collective. But yeah, it's an interesting challenge.
I can definitely feel that from you sometimes, especially because you have to wake up so early, right? And like you said, it's this anticipation of where is your soul going. Dream state, I think we've talked about, like you're like legit gone. But it's similar to how you were talking about sitting in that winter of the actual season of winter and going inward, right? But going inward meant that you're discovering all of these things. That sleep state is similar, right? You're going inward to the inner universe, which is outward, which is fucking who knows where. And it's a lot. And I think it again is one of those practices you need to start, something that I'm still starting. Even though I haven't had social media, I would have like games on my phone or whatever. And I think doing face yoga or even just like rubbing my lymph nodes, you know, like waking up my body by like light squeezes or rubs to get my circulatory system going has given me something to do with my hands instead of scrolling on my phone.
Oh, I
And
love
then
that.
yeah, so it's just like I also have like a book next to my bed. So if I really am like, I'm not ready to get up, say it's a weekend or something, it's putting that book in front of me first, easing into. And what I loved is that you mentioned like the self talk of how you speak to yourself in the morning, right? And now remember, this is all interchangeable with the morning, the beginning of your life cycle, the season of spring. It's also the, what is it, the waxing moon or the week after your period. Like these are all areas that hold that same frequency. And it's very childlike and innocent. So when you're able to talk to yourself like that, like, and lift yourself up the way you would like a child, right? Very direct and honest, as opposed to like, yeah, I know I'm doing a good job. I don't need to tell myself. No, no, no. In the morning, you need to tell yourself, hey, good job not picking up the phone today. Just go wash your face first and then you could pick up the phone. You know, slowly wake yourself up. Start to add some play into your morning by maybe putting on some good music while you're getting ready, which I'm sure most of us do anyway, but like, you know, like really getting into the silliness of it because you're shifting from this yin energy to a yang energy and you really need to start slow, but you want to build that up. And I think part of that is being compassionate and understanding that you're still in this like little fertile state, like your little, you know, like a little embryo, like waking up, like, babe, I'm coming out. Here I am, world. Please be easy with me this morning.
So if I were to sum up the energy of spring into one word, it would be dreamy. And it's no wonder that we start spring in Pisces season and then quickly move into Aries season, which is very fiery, and Aries is the trailblazer, and it's just a polar opposite energy from the dreamy ethereal energy that is Pisces. But that dreamy energy is, you know, sort of what we've been talking about already, that like that state between sleep and wake is sort of a beautiful symbolism for any part of your spiritual journey where you are shifting from one paradigm to another. And in that state, that's when the seeds are coming to the surface. Your seeds, whether they be desires, inspiration, thoughts, ideas, you know, metaphorically speaking, but then also real seeds that you plant in your garden. Do you have any seeds of intention that you plan on planting this spring, Tara?
I actually have a lot of seeds. In the stillness of winter, in just listening to my body and my heart and what's to come, I was almost given, and this came through as one of the collective messages on our YouTube channel that I posted, but the concept of getting these seeds in winter, right? And I'm talking about like inspiration or downloads, right? And being like, woo, I want to run with this. But they really showed me of like sitting with it, examining it, kind of like feeling into it a little bit before you even start to feed it to grow, and then allowing that to grow before finding form. So for me, a lot of these seeds that I planted are a lot of projects for myself that came in for my teaching career, for Frequency Broads, and my spiritual career. And it was really hard for me, especially in winter and even in this moment, to not feel that I need to jump on them like they're running away from me, right? Because I got them months ago and I'm such a person who's like always moving. So for me, it's about taking those seeds and being conscious in where and how I plant them and not worrying about what form they take. Because I'm so like, oh, frequency broads, right? Here's a seed, frequency broads. And I was like, what? And it took us forever to find form. And it's still taking form. So instead of having this attachment to the outcome, it's the understanding that it is a seed and it is beautiful to watch grow no matter how it grows and how long it lasts. So for me, it's as much as I'm planting these projects, I'm still working on my biggest seed planting, which is just patience and letting go of control of the outcome. So those are like the internal seeds as I plant external seeds. What about you?
Well, I want to touch on two things you
Oh,
just
yeah.
said. Letting go of the outcome is ultimately trust, and trusting that's what meant for you will come for you. And trust is not an easy one for some of us. And it's sort of a dance of surrendering and allowing whatever you've planted in the past to feed you into the future until these next seeds
Mm.
are ready for harvest or the fruit is ripe. And the other thing I wanted to touch on is it is so important to take time to process downloads before sharing them, because oftentimes if you are just going to like repeat what you're getting, there's going to be so much projection of your own stuff,
Mm-hmm.
good or bad. And downloads are intended to be integrated before shared. And I think a prime example of this is looking at any politician and hearing whatever bullshit rhetoric comes out of their mouth, or any type of fact, quote unquote, that is not a fact. It's just someone's opinion spoken with authority. And so I do encourage you, when speaking your truth, to find your voice of authority and to not let it be one of bias or mimicking others, but your own internal truth, your voice. I forgot the word I just used, but you know where I'm going with this one.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because it's a reminder that I need to hear often. And I like to say and believe that I do live my truth, and I think I do, but trust, as much as I say I trust in the universe and I trust in myself, I still have that fear of like, but what if it doesn't work out the way I planned? And that is something that I've been working on since the day I was fucking born. So thank you for saying that.
I'm glad you acknowledge how you're hardwired, but then also acknowledge that you have the ability to change this hardwiring and to reprogram yourself. And you're doing
Absolutely.
it.
And I was just saying literally like 30 minutes ago how sometimes we get these downloads and it's like trying to download something on an old operating system, and you need to make sure that your operating system is upgraded enough for this new download, and that requires internal assessment, right? What am I running right now? What beliefs are am I holding right now, and is that something that I want to change?
And like clearing out of the old files. And, that kind of ties into what I'm talking about and wanting to debrief on winter. It's an old system that you say goodbye to. And it's, sometimes it's easier to just like let it go away, but there is no away. Away, I think, in the highest form is integration. It's allowing whatever was to integrate into you. So,
Okay, now your seeds, your seeds.
whew, seeds. Yeah, well, based on everything I revealed during last episode on relationships, I'm opening myself up to love. in a way I haven't done before. And I feel like this time around, I'm going to show up as my authentic self and
Mm.
bring this version of me. I'm so proud I took the time to get to know, to cultivate, to integrate, to let let this wild woman inside of me be all that she is. And I have full faith that I will meet someone who celebrates my resonance and is, yeah.
That makes me so happy.
So I'm opening up my heart to love, which my heart's always open to love. Like I love love, right? But this is different because let's be honest, I was pretty traumatized by the last situation, and I like that I call it a situation. I can't even call it a relationship at this point. My last life lesson. Yeah, so I think that's the biggest thing for me right now. But, Tara, I have to confess that two things. I really want to develop a better morning routine that goes beyond self talk or not getting on my phone right away. So that's one. And, I've been playing with different ideas and seeing what, baby steps, right? But then
Yeah,
the
of
other thing
course.
is, I have so many clothes in my closet that I don't wear anymore that I do not resonate with. I've grown and changed so much just even in like the past 6 months. And I look at these articles of clothing and there's this part of me that, sees this full life cycle of, the garment factory and the textile industry. And then, obviously there are ways, to donate or sell these clothes. So it's like not like it's all going to end up in a landfill. But I think there's this part of me that's like, I need to get rid of my old self and this identity that people saw me as and I saw myself as in these articles of clothing. And it's sort of like the masks we wear, right? But the clothes and how we present ourselves has such a specific frequency. And
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I have probably been living in like yoga pants for like the past 3 years for the most part. It's time to release this old identity. And I think in order for me to step into this place of opening myself up for love, I got to say goodbye to my old self. And so there is sort of this like still this transition of that winter spring, right? Where it's a ritual.
And I'm so glad you said that because whether we think about the morning, whether we think about the spring season or what have you, you cannot plant new seeds in crowded soil, right? You either need to lay a new foundation to build on top of, or, which isn't so good to the earth, till it, which ain't great, but that's what we do in small gardening. So you clearing, now that you've gone in, you've peeled off all those layers that are sitting outside of you that don't resonate anymore have to go. And with spring, a part of the energy, I mean, this is something that everybody knows, spring cleaning, right? All of those little nooks and crannies that have been holding dust, but who have been holding energy, like you were saying, like the versions of you who lived in these clothes past, the frequencies that they hold. We're not shaming them, but we're just saying, okay, it's time for you to go so new can arise, can birth through me. So that is why we practice this intentional, and I'm not just talking about like, oh, go through your closet and throw it out, right? Like intentional spring cleaning of our physical space, our mental space, and our emotional and spiritual space in order to birth this new energy of spring. So you talking about morning routines, it's that same way. How do we release what was left from sleep, right? In that middle state of just allowing yourself to sit in that and come into spring energy of morning, and then allow what's being birthed through you that day to come alive. But it cannot happen unless you clean and cleanse that shit out.
It's so true. And I guess with me saying this, please, all of you, hold me accountable for cleaning out my damn closet.
I will.
Thank you.
But another thing that you said is ceremony, right? Honoring like you said, honoring the winter and what it's brought you, but also celebrating and honoring the spring being born. And that could look in so many ways depending on how you honor and show thanks and step into the next space. But that could be done through your spring cleaning by cleaning with healthy, maybe DIY essential oil, vinegar based cleaning products. So you're not leaving chemicals from, like you were saying, where did these hands come from and what was extracted from it, but your own personal cleaning that feels right to you, going in and setting that. And I know for me, part of spring is the witchiness in me. Using my broom to brush things out the door to get rid of that frequency, using cinnamon to blow in the door to bring in abundance. And something that really stands out for me when doing my full spring cleaning, like ceremony type way, is using the 4 elements. So that
wait,
means,
before we get into that, I think the other important thing to note between the cinnamon blowing in and the dust blowing out, I think cleaning your door, like scrubbing your freaking door, your door handle, like all of it. Scrub your front door. Period.
Thank you. Thank you for that, because that is super, super important. Thank you. Yes. But I was just going to say, using the 4 elements by having, you have air, have your windows open. Let in the cool breeze that is still winter as we're transitioning into spring, right? That extra cool air to enliven you. Use fire by using certain herbs to cleanse. I know we mentioned like white sage is over harvested and it's not done in a earth healthy way. There's so many things that you can burn that are outside your door just to burn a freaking cinnamon stick. You know what I mean? Like burn a bay leaf. Like there are so many things that you can burn to call in what it is you want, if it's a specific herb, or just to refreshen the air. So you have air, fire, water, like you said, scrubbing that door, right? Using your own cleaner to really get that shit clean inside your cabinets, on your shelves. And then earth, the way that I like to do it is bring in a piece of earth. So I'll go and get flowers for myself, or I'll go for a walk, find a stick, right? And it's just bringing all of those elements together, saying, yeah, with air, fire, water, earth, do we have creation? Do we have birth coming out of that?
And I even like the idea of maybe not relating to your home or space specifically, but after you go through the process of cleansing and clearing out your space, going out into nature and recharging your body, because you are actually processing a lot of energy by releasing stuff, and just going and touching a tree and connecting with a tree for 5 minutes, or like taking your shoes off and sinking your toes into the ground, will recharge you like nothing else on this planet.
Absolutely. Right? We're in a deep death. And how do we get that energy? Hug a tree. Hug a damn tree and tell her, thank you for the air I breathe. Create that circuit with you and that tree. Or another spring ritual that I love doing is making like earth mandalas on the ground, flower mandalas on the ground, like in the park, to give thanks for earth rebirthing and rebirthing that energy within me and being part of this cycle, right? There's so many different rituals for you to honor earth and honor this rebirth of earth, right? I have a little list here, but I wanted to see if you had any ways of how you honor or welcome in spring.
Wait. Really love that you create flower mandalas, because I think for people walking in the park, it's a really good way to remind them to be aware of your surroundings and pay your respects to this beautiful planet that houses us. I feel like there is something coming through on sort of a short but sweet tangent. I just want to make it known, if you aren't already aware, that March, of course, is when it becomes spring, but March is also Women's History Month, and March 8th was International Women's Day. And so, really tuning into the frequency of what it means to be a woman in this portal holder, and what you do with your portal. And so I think I like to think of cleansing my portal. I know that why is this sounding so kinky all of a sudden?
You know what? I like it though. Tell me, how do you cleanse your portal?
And when I say portal, for me, I'm more so talking about this conduit, this part of my energetic center in the core of my being where energy flows in and out of, but intentionally clearing whatever fragmented energy might be still there, whether be after cord cutting or soul retrievals or anything like that. I think one nice way easing into the spring is to practice some sort of harmonic attunement and live music. And this can vary from whatever genre you'd like. But, Tara and I, like we've mentioned before, we met at a sound ceremony. And, a few weeks ago, toward the tail end of winter, Tara and I had the pleasure of going to a shamanic soul journey. And it is a little bit more, beyond our typical sound bath with crystal bowls and chimes and such. There was... maybe you can better explain it because I'm still processing. I think it changed me.
It has changed me as well. We were lucky enough to meet two beautiful people, Megan and Eben. Shout out, they're amazing. And what they do is they use their lessons and teaching from shamanic journeying and channel the entire time. So they'll have a theme or, an intention set for it. And they just sing and speak in light language and play whatever instrument. And it takes us all on a crazy journey and tends to link the whole room together. Although we may be seeing and experiencing very different things based on our own intentions, we were all linked to that web, and they really help us move through and process the energies and frequencies that we hold within us. And especially coming out of that stillness of winter and entering spring, there was so much to be really looked at and honored before moving away and shifting into something new. And Victoria, I know that you had a major journey that I would love to hear about.
I suppose the abbreviated version would be, it was wild to process such deep-seated grief that I didn't realize was so embedded in parts of my body, specifically my solar plexus and my guts, which I'm very tuned into my intuitive powers located in this region. But beyond, the processing of the grief that bubbled to the surface, I had the most profound, the most detailed, it was the wildest visualization I've ever experienced. And there's no way, there's no reason to take drugs. Like, if you are tuned into your mind's eye and can access these other dimensions, like, drugs just seem really silly. Granted, they have a time and place and purpose, and so not saying that's not a thing when it needs to be or when you're called to some sort of medicine.
Of course.
But holy shit, I'm here just to remind you that what is possible when you tune in and allow yourself to be guided into these different dimensions, literally out of this world.
So if not in this world, where did you go?
Well, I set the intention at the beginning. We were guided to either set an intention or ask a question. And so I said, hey, let's anchor in the fairy realm.
Ooh.
And holy shit. Okay, so I've been connected with the fairy realm for about 15 years now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And where I went was like the mothership of the fays. And it felt and looked like deep Amazonian ancient forests, like tree
Oh,
stumps that you could only like dream up or maybe see in the movies, right? It was the beings, we all know what a fairy looks like in a drawing or, or if you're lucky and have connected with the fairy realm, you know what they look like in this waking, what do we want to call it? The 3D.
yeah. Yes.
Um, but all of the other creatures and beings that coexist in the Fae realm are equally, if not more magical.
Mm. Did they show you or tell you anything that you're willing to share, or is that your little secret when you go to visit?
They do love their secrets. They're very mischievous. So when you do
Sneaky.
connect, if you ever connect, just know they like to be playful and jovial and gather in community. I think they're a really great example of the power of community and coming together and dancing in circles. And I learned about their rituals through this really wonderful woman I met in my late 20s. Her name was Sherry. She's actually Andy Warhol's cousin.
Oh, okay.
Just no big deal.
Casual, whatever.
But she is an amazing painter herself. So it was cool to see her artwork. But I happened to connect with her, I think about spirits, and she said, "Oh, I host fairy circles in my backyard. I have this giant backyard where it's sort of this like convention center for fairies to meet in the region." And I grew up in Western Pennsylvania in kind of the middle of nowhere. And it's a place where you would imagine fairies to live. Very fern gully, lots of rivers and ferns galore. So I ended up going to her backyard or fairy circle gathering, and I was with a bunch of older women, which was cool to be around women who all shared this passion for connecting with the fairy realm. And a lot of them were gardeners and, connected to the plant world, queendom. And so we sat in the circle and connected with the fairies and allowed them to show us whatever came to us. And I think at first I had a really hard time visualizing them. I really could only feel them kind of fluttering. They love long, thick hair, of course, right? So they were always sort of like tickling my face, and I could feel them like in my hair. And just last week, I kept getting this like consistent like tickle up in here. And I was like, oh my God, do I have lice? Like, what's happening? And then I realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's spring. And then ended up connecting even more at this sound ceremony. But what was really unique about this backyard of Sherry's was that grass would grow in rings, and the grass would be very thick and green and be a perfect circle. And so there were like probably like 40 of them in her backyard. And after
Wow.
attending this first fairy circle, I thought, oh my gosh, let me come home. Let me see if I can start to have fairy circles pop up in my yard. And so I think I had started to maybe plant some like wildflower seeds, and I would go to the garden and I would call them in and I would try to connect to their frequency. I kid you not, even a week later, mushrooms popped up in a circle. So that's actually the other thing. Fairy circles or fairy rings can either be grass or mushrooms. And it's the mycelium network underground that I've read different things. Some people, view it as a nuisance and they want to immediately mow over it. So I just had never even really like connected with the mushroom world at that point. So, and for a long time, I've been vegetarian for 20 years, and mushrooms are kind of a staple for a lot of vegetarians, but I always felt like I don't want to eat mushrooms because that's where fairies live. That was like the rationale in the
Oh,
back of
that's
my
so
mind.
cute.
My like inner child was like, you can't eat a fairy's home.
Oh,
Um, but then I'm now an adult
you
and
did.
I love mushrooms. So
Oh my God, I love that. I always knew that Fae was also the energy of spring, right? That frequency is the frequency that their dimension holds quite often, if not like all the time. I'm not really sure if they have seasons. I don't know. But what a fun way to celebrate and honor and welcome spring is by, I don't know if you did anything like major or if you just sat with intention and maybe an offering for the Fae. I mean, now I'm ready. I'm like, okay, is that what we're doing for the spring equinox? Is having a Fae convention? Because I'm fucking there for it. I'll make a flower mandala. Okay. I love the wildflower seeds. Like, I'm in. Let's do it.
well, most people have this philosophy that you have to see in order to believe. Fairies teach us that believing is seeing. And really, all you have to do is be open to the possibility of them visiting you while out in nature or in meditation or in your garden. So, just saying.
I
They're
love
they're
that.
here they're here to kiss your forehead and remind you of the magic that's all around you.
Yes. Yes. Stop trying to debunk the shit that you feel and see. Just let them do their thing. But I love spring, and I know you do too. So get prepared by getting ready to do some spring cleaning. You could do things like flower essence, where you dilute it in some oil and you can use that, making flower mandalas or an altar to honor spring and winter. Don't forget to honor winter. Um, Seed planting intentionally and harmonizing with the earth. Like Victoria said, stepping into the grass, hugging a tree, being grateful for this rebirth and this time of renewal. So, thank you so much for allowing us to be in our authenticity as we share our stories. And that is why, in this moment of spring, of this rebirth, we're going to honor both of our resonant frequencies and say we ourselves are taking a spring break. So, for the next 2 weeks, we will not be sharing as much or sending out more podcast episodes, but that gives us an opportunity to hear back from you. Any questions you have, what's resonating and what's not, because we love sharing our story, but we're doing it for you. So you let us know what it is that's working and what topics you want to hear about next. Because although we want to hear from you, we do have our next topic plan that I know Victoria is very excited about. As am I.
I mean, I say this about every topic we talk about, but
That's true.
if you know me, this is at the top of the list. Sex and intimacy, baby. And what perfect season to discuss connecting.
And allowing that to get juicy and blossom up.
Make it rain, baby.
Ooh. So please reach out to us. Make sure that you're subscribed on YouTube or on wherever you're listening, honestly, so that way you know when we come back from our spring break to wrap up season 1 with a couple of more episodes. Thank you so much. Enjoy the start of spring. And remember, seeds take a while to grow and you don't harvest till the fall anyway. So be patient and easy with yourself. We love you.
Love you.
Happy fairy gathering, my friends.